But
Anyway, I'm
but
wondering where that world of physicality lives with you, and at your ages now, and what's going on with that, and how it makes you feel, and if you want to talk about that. I mean, it's not a very.
It's certainly in my wellhouse right now. Well, I've just been diagnosed with carcinoma in situ of the bladder.
Oh.
Join the club.
Yeah, and I know.
Hello.
I know
What
it's a
took
big
you
club.
so long?
But yeah, mine's better than
They
yours.
stick something up your dick. It's a tubercular.
Not something.
Oh well, yeah, no, yeah,
You
next
do the
Tuesday.
hokey pokey for an hour, and you're dying to take a leak.
2
but you
hours.
can't.
I can't take a leak for 2 hours. I can't do that.
Have you done
They
this?
like
No,
you
next
more.
Tuesday's my
Yeah.
first
Okay.
session.
Okay.
You have somebody you like hold it for you.
After 2 hours.
A clamp, a C clamp.
When you see that label on the drawer in the nurse's station where it says, penile clamp, you turn away really quickly.
Oh my God.
We're laughing, but I'm in a little pain
It's
right
not-
now
it's-
about having
no,
it.
Everything
we
funny
both-
is
we
being
both
cut
have-
out. You
we
know
both
that.
have
Everything
done
we've
it.
said funny so far is going to be cut out.
If you get a nice nurse,
That helps.
that's the only thing that helps.
Yeah, okay.
So you're
Anyway.
going through the same treatment that Matt and Dan.
Yeah, well,
Dan
it's just a lot of stuff. So I'm in a sort of a breakdown period here. I mean, physical breakdown. Have been cast for 3 years.
That sucks.
Looked in the
doesn't it?
mirror and saw that I was older. Little gray.
No, you look the youngest in this, and you're the oldest.
Yeah. So I was sort of at 6 and 7s.
At this point, right now, this
Yeah,
today.
yeah. It's the timing is like this. Yesterday I got the phone call. We set it up. This morning I got the schedule, which is okay. I mean, I've been through a lot.
You've been through a lot.
Yeah, this my little
Yeah,
friend here. This
yeah.
is all surgically gifted to me.
That's one way to put
But
it.
I'm alive, and I shouldn't be. So I mean, and I'm not going to run, but I haven't really hit the ground running yet. I've been sort of taking the blow, and I'm processing, and I know that people raise their hands. There's a lot of people in the crowd have gone through this. It's very treatable.
It's very
Yeah.
treatable.
Yep.
High success rate.
But I'm having a sense of. I used to joke about
But
I'm,
it's an
I'm
invasion.
circling the drain. It means. But it's just more of a really a visceral feeling now that this is it, or I ask myself the question: is this the slippery? Am I on the edge of that slope?
Right,
And then
right.
what if I am?
It's-
Well, that means that I'm going to die. Oh, well, surprise!
Guess what?
Might
You're
have
going to
done it.
ruin the show with
I
that.
had no. Really?
What?
So I
In my contract is no talk of mortality.
you lost it. You moved your head again. You lose. So anyway, I don't have a real solid answer for that. I haven't been defeated. It hasn't knocked me down, but I've had like a couple of months of one thing after another, petty,
is true.
minor, and I'm
Yeah.
just tired in terms of that. But I'll have a plan.
I haven't been ill, but I get scared lately that I will be. I've had this sort of an extended cold, and I start coughing, and next thing I'm thinking the worst fucking things possible.
We always do.
You're probably right. No, I mean, as you get older,
That's
as
I
you
know,
get
it's
older,
sort
a
of-
cold turns into a pneumonia, turns into not breathing.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. It's the waiting.
And we
it's
don't
like-
have the experience of knowing. You have the experience of being a younger person with a cold or a cough.
Yes.
But you don't. Now you know.
Something,
Something is different.
This could be the enunciatory symptom.
Right.
This
My,
is
what a
it.
great
Oh,
line.
wow.
I like that.
my friend Tom
Wait a
calls
minute, I
this
want to
stage
write that down. I gotta.
My
The
friend Tom
enunciator.
calls this stage of life waiting for the diagnosis.
Yeah.
That's
well,
how he defines the term.
Oh, that's grim.
You're waiting for the diagnosis.
And how do we live with that? How do you live with
How
that?
do you live with it when you're 10? You know you're mortal from the get-go.
Yeah, but it's not.
No, you
it's not
don't.
real.
Yeah,
It's
I
not
mean,
real.
the imminence of
I was
Oh,
more scared
there's
of it
still
as
magic.
a little kid than I am
Than
now.
you are now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I was
no, I'm not
terrified
scared.
when
I'm
I
not
first
afraid of-
realized that you only live for a finite amount of time. As a kid, I remember I lost sleep, I cried, my parents had to comfort me. Now I don't cry or anything.
And you-
Mostly what I try to do is distract myself.
Yeah.
I went through
So-
my
so-
Kierkegaardian phase when I thought, I have to face it. And
The
then
what?
I had-
The what phase of it?
Guardian.
Kierkegaardian.
Kierkegaard,
I
yeah,
thought
he's
it
gonna
was
drop
Kierkegaard.
I thought it was some insurance company, the Guardian.
It is. Yeah. You know, existential.
Because you
didn't
put on
pay off,
furniture, so the
so I
spot
went into
Started
insurance.
selling insurance. So I had a similar emotion at a young age about death, about a horrible fear of death, but not for me, but for my mother, who, when she got a cold, it turned into bronchitis, and a couple of times turned into pneumonia. And my father, with us kids, I was the youngest of four, was just, I think he must have been so beside himself with fear about what would happen to her that he was angry with the children. You know, it was like,
Oh, yeah.
be quiet, your mother's resting,
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff. So when he basically took that knowledge about my mother's illness and jammed it into my consciousness, so that I could not sleep at night with fear about what's going to happen to my mother.
But to your mother, not to,
Yeah.
not to you.
But there was a positive outcome. That's when I really started reading. I mean, for real. I'd be under the covers
So
with
you-
a flashlight and them books.
To distract or to learn?
Well, it started out to
distract.
It
Right.
became a love of learning, a love of books.
Yeah. You know, there was this book, I think it might be 20 years old now. Do you remember? It was written by a Canadian,
Oh yeah.
Ernest Becker, called The
Denial of Death. Yeah. Macmillan.
And then he...
You would know the publisher.
and then he won the
ISBN
Pulitzer
978.
Prize, but he died before he could pick it up.
No kidding.
Yeah. But it was a very influential
Sorry, say
book.
that again, Danny?
It was called The Denial of Death. Oh, he won the Pulitzer Prize, but before the ceremony, he died.
Is this for
Little
real or a
irony.
joke? Is this
No,
it was for real?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That's a
Anyhow,
book
it was
we
a
used to
very
carry.
influential
Yeah.
book, and he was an anthropologist, I think, a social anthropologist, and his idea was, you know, what's basic to the human condition. You know, for Freud it was sex, for somebody else it was
Umbrellas.
what else. But he said basic is dealing with our mortality. That we're the only species that's conscious of mortality.
Yeah.
Right.
And-
We're the only
and
ones.
all
Right.
of the way society sets itself up is to deal with it. Mostly to deny it.
To deny it. Right.
Along comes religion, which says you have an afterlife, and various things, and it works. You know, actually, societies that have religion that tend to
Tend to
thrive.
last longer. Right. Right.
But one on the list of strategies for dealing with the knowledge of your mortality is distraction. I used to poo-poo that. I was such a, you know, influenced by.
Right. I'm gonna
from
face
the
my
Fritz
death.
Field,
deal with
I'm
it.
gonna
It's gonna
face the
take
truth.
it in, and I'm gonna-
You know, I read Kierkegaard, I read Sartre. I'm going to face it in the eye. I don't want to see it. I don't want to know about it. I want to turn on the radio loud. You know, when the bad thoughts come. So I had my checkup. I have a checkup every 4 months, I think. I love my doctor. And so I said, okay, what am I, yesterday.
Yeah. When am I
He
gonna?
said, my blood work looked very good. But I said, so what am I going to die of? He said, I don't know. You know, at your age,
Could be tomorrow.
it could, you know, it could be this, could be that. You could get run over. And I said, will I make it to 86? I don't know why I had this in my mind.
86 is funny.
86 is fine.
86.
funny because 86 is a deep
Where
six,
did
right?
that- I wonder where that
Solid,
came
yeah.
from.
86. Where 86 came from was
military code.
no. Chumley's.
Chumleys.
Chumley's Bar on what street? And they just
I knew
reopened
you'd
it.
know. I knew you'd know.
86 was like to 97 is to go, is a takeout order, but 86 is to leave. Is when the cops would come.
Oh, really?
So
Oh.
you got 86th.
Fascinating.
I heard
You
it
got
was the
86.
military code of criminal justice, Article 86. Article 86.
I thought
The
that-
Uniform
Anyhow,
Code of
Marshal.
Military.
He said to me I had a decent chance because it's one of these things that I never was good at understanding statistics and probability. But the longer you live, the more likely you are to live long.
George Burns said, if you make it to 100, you got it made because so few people die at 100.
As my father used to say, if you eat a meatball a day for 100 years, you'll live to a ripe old age.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
Yeah, illness will do something.
It'll get you.
And the idea of getting a cold, it's like when you're 40 and you trip on the ice and you break your ankle. It's one thing. When you're 79 and you trip, and Uncle Walter was never the same after.
He fell.
Yeah,
You know,
we've all got
yeah.
those stories.
Yeah.
You ever think about killing yourself at a certain point?
Killing.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
About what?
Absolutely.
So if you get so bad,
I don't want to go through. I don't want to go through a long, prolonged
Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
I really don't.
I've fantasized about it.
So have I.
Even about how I want to do it.
Me too.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah,
I've actually figured it out for myself,
me too.
and it has reduced my anxiety by a certain amount. I wouldn't do it violently because I wouldn't want to leave anything behind that's a mess to clean up. But I remember heroes of mine from the 60s, Scott and Helen Nearing, who wrote a book called Living the Good Life, which is part of what brought me to the Berkshires.
I know that book.
Wonderful book. And each of them, Scott was 20 years older than Helen, and when it came on his 100th birthday, he died on his 100th birthday, and he had been for a couple of weeks, I think, starving himself, choosing not
Oh,
to
really?
eat and
Yeah.
drink. And Helen did the same thing 20 years
Even
later.
though she was younger.
20 years later,
20 years later, excuse
20
me.
years later.
20 years later,
Oh.
when
she had a
was
good
about-
good time for those 20
Exactly.
years.
Yeah.
You know.
And now,
She ate like a pig.
you know, with not to get morbid, but you know, with hospice, who can come in and keep you comfortable with whatever the hell you've got, and apparently they don't
suppose.
give you water, but they put these moisturized sponges on your
Oh,
lips
while you're willfully.
while you're willfully
leaving.
dying,
Yeah.
willfully withdrawing.
So
from
you're
food and
not
water.
being assisted.
No, you're just
You're not
being
giving
made
a-
comfortable, and it gives
Yeah,
you time to
it's-
say
it's-
goodbye. And you're not, you know, people. Generally, I have a friend whose mother did it at 95, and at 95 it took her 6 days. Three
6
days
days.
to get. When she stopped eating and drinking, she took 3 days for her to become unconscious, and then 3 more days for her to expire. And I thought, boy, that's painless, and that puts me in charge of this.
Painless for
That's the key
you, but
Yeah,
it's
well,
what
that's
it's our
What
families.
about your
that-
spouse, your
loved
children,
ones.
your grandchildren?
Yeah.
The
You know,
downstairs,
that's-
downstairs neighbors when you fall
Watch-
down.
Watching me waste in
The
a
dog.
nursing home is going to be fun
no,
for them
see,
too.
there's
No,
that,
no,
isn't there?
No,
No, and
no,
there's
it's
a
a
part-
hard one though.
Yeah.
Very hard.
I have not considered that at all.
Well, there's a time to go.
Get
There's
the
a
office
passage
done while
in George Bernard Shaw's Man and Superman, the Don Juan in Hell portion, where the devil's debating Don Juan, and it's Bernard Shaw speaking.
Having a
of
good
it.
time.
And he says, you know, isn't it, if we all were to admit it, and paraphrasing, of course, is that when it's finally good to get rid of them. You know, there are those situations that, even in a loving relationship, after you've gone through the letting
Yeah,
go, there's
yeah.
a release, and it's good. It's good. You know, I remember holding my wife, my son and my daughter and I were holding my first wife down the road from where I live now, at the nursing home in Lee. And I got the call at school in the early afternoon saying, Bob, the nurse says you should come down. Penny's not going to last through the night. My son got the call. He flew from Ball State, from Muncie, Indiana. And that was the tension. Is he going to make it? Is he going to make it in time? And Barbara and I were holding her mother. And I wanted it to be over. And at the same time, there was a part of my brain that was in awe of the power of the life force. And I was thinking of Shaw, because the whole discussion was about the life force.
Right.
God, it's a powerful thing, you know? And I think to end it arbitrarily for each of us is a birthright. I mean, I have no moral or ethical compunctions against it. For myself, I've ruled it out a couple of times when I thought I was close. I still reserve it, and who knows what's
Right.
down the road.
Yes.
The tragedy is that for those young people or people who see no options when there are options or there are better outcomes, and their despair takes them down that road, that saddens me.
Yeah.
And
I
it's
can't
different.
say they didn't have a right to. I can say, oh, if they were only thinking about the tragedy they left behind for the loved ones,
Right.
you know,
right.
and all that. But that's I can't do that. I don't know what's going on in their mind, their universe.
My father was suffering from Alzheimer's when he entered, he was 72, 73. And, you know, we saw it become progressively worse. And then one day, my mother was in the shower. They lived in Co-op City in the Bronx, and he opened the window and dove out from the
No.
22nd floor.
Yeah.
And boy, that kept me awake for a long time. I want to just introduce one more thing. We don't have all that much more time for today's session.
In general.
Jenna,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who knows?
yeah,
Tell
who
me.
knows? Who
And
knows
then-
who's going to
and
show
then
up
there were-
next
And
time?
then there were 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to drink the rest of my wine, I hope.
Well, I knew in Danny's book on Travels with Epicurus, there was a particular beautiful section, which, by the way, I've purloined and put on the Third Act Project website from your book,
I'll have my people talk to your people.
about
He took the
friendship.
Korean franchise and the
It's
copyright.
about
It
friendship,
came through China, actually.
the value of friendship,
Ah, yes.
and I want to.
Oh, I just read that. I just
talk
read that this
about-
morning about the other guy on the website, Howard.
Howard
somebody?
Englander.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and friendship and through the years.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
how
so I
important
just
it is.
wanted to talk about where friendship lives in our lives now, and how it sustains us, if at all, or have friendships become more, less intense, more, less meaningful?
My favorite philosopher, next to Danny, psychologist, Eric Fromm.
Oh.
Wonderful man. I had an opportunity to meet him and listen to a lecture at El Camino College on Hawthorne Boulevard in L.A. He charged $3 a person. We were in the gym in the stadium on the stands, and he was about 5 foot tall, really little guy.
Yeah.
And he went on for like 2 hours. It was just lovely. But anyway, he in the Art of Loving, or one of his books.
Art of Loving was the big one.
He
and then
said
had
that
another-
the only solution to the problem of human existence is love. Long story short, that's the connection that's of only real value. You know, all the other stuff I look at, you get an award, you get this, you get a new TV and all that, but it's the loving connections that nourish, and the rest is really bullshit. I mean, I am a human being on this planet, part of this species. And then more connections that are meaningful, not just say how many likes I get on Facebook, but the people you sit down and you cry with. You tell them what you're afraid of.
and you don't have to say a lot.
Yeah, you don't
and
have to know.
and you know, because you, especially the old friends, you've shared this,
Yeah.
so you've come through whatever you come through at whatever level. When you're 21, you've come through being a teenager. When you're 40, you've come through your second
Shared
divorce.
experience,
When
yeah.
you're 80, you look at each other, and I remember that joke. You don't have to tell me
Yeah.
that one again.
Again, to go back to friends, and he was a friend of yours, the friends who haven't departed, and do we rely on them more? I find myself relying a little bit more on those who are close, and who are also able, I think, in that process, to get a little closer yet. You know, it's like, I've been, as some of you know, I was part of another men's group that generated the initial idea for the Third Act Project. There's something about the comfort of being with people you know. Just no need for pretense, or this is the way I feel it anyway.
Well, it's cathartic,
To
isn't
be
it?
myself and to be able to say what I
Yeah.
want to say and to
Confident,
hear what
yeah.
people.
You've been through a lot with each other. You don't have to put any artifice up.
No, you don't try to
impress
you
That's
just
the loving relationship.
Well, I
it's-
still try to impress everybody, but
It just doesn't work. Yeah.
You would have thought I'd given
Lose
up by
it.
now.
80 cents. But
I think we're at
you know
0-0,
one thing though,
Salim.
it was interesting for me growing up, and maybe it was part of my generation. My father didn't have a close friend, not one.
didn't mind that.
As you started to say that,
Yeah.
I'm trying to think
My
of
brother, I have an older brother, 3 years older than I am.
At least in older age, my father didn't either.
Doesn't have a close friend. Didn't want to be my close friend growing up. I always wanted.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because of the neediness. I don't care as long as I can fulfill
Yeah.
the need. But I've always had friends, and I always valued them. And not to get too soppy about it, you know, if you're married a long time, I'm married 40 years. She's a really good friend.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And my daughter,
that's-
thank God, we get along so well. She's a good friend. I ask her advice.
I don't have to ask my daughters for advice.
Yeah, give it
Thank you.
All my kids keep giving me
Although,
advice.
you know what I was saying, that I don't try to impress, I'm still trying to impress my daughter, and it doesn't work. And can I tell you a funny story about that? So one time, I'm, almost trying to, gee, Dad. So
But you want that, right?
I want that. I don't get it. So, my agent told me, he says, guess what? One of your books is on the bestseller list in Bulgaria. So I thought maybe this
This would do
might
it.
do it. I call up my daughter, who's in the book business in New York at the time at a publisher. And I said, hon,
Guess what?
guess what? Your dad,
#1 in Bulgaria.
number one, bestseller in Bulgaria. And she said, just like that, she said, great, Dad, that means you sold 7 books.
Oh, yeah.